Namaskar. Before I say anything, please like this video. We're going to share so much information today, and we need this to reach every corner of the world. So first, let us welcome our co-host 𝙒𝙬𝙤𝙬𝙤. This is DGI-426. 𝙒𝙬𝙤, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskara, good morning to everybody. Happy to be here.
Sir, I'm going to run through today because there's so much that we need to discuss. First off, $100 a barrel crude at a time when in US's strategic petroleum reserve is 1/3 of its capacity. How long is this blinking going to, staring in each other's eyes is going to happen, sir?
Well, I think it's even inevitable. The oil market, the futures are pointing to rising costs per barrel. The coordinated effort by OPEC plus nations that includes primarily Russia and Saudi Arabia, they are saying that it is unacceptable. So they are jacking up or reducing the production, which in turn is causing the futures to rise. It's obviously, we covered this in the last DGI, but today is the first time that there is a price tag that is being put in terms of the rising future oil costs. We already covered this. This is going to have a challenge around the world in terms of how to offset this inflation that is already looming its head.
Does the United States have any price agreements with the Western Europe, sir?
No, there are no price agreements. There's no price caps. I think basically it has met the gap. It's needless to say, United States is bound to benefit as the prices go up. It probably helps the current administration in terms of feeding its social welfare programs of the precious dollars. But where is it coming from? It is coming from not increased production or increased capacity in the United States. We have been cutting ourselves on that. But they're slowly pulling without, sometimes talking to the House, sometimes not talking to the House, from the strategic reserve. What will they do? They're probably also from the domestic supply they're pulling out, which in turn has consequences to all of us at the gas pumps.
Viewers, a couple of announcements before we jump along into today's news. One is that we're going to have part 2 of the demonstration that took place on 4th April in front of California State Senator Wahhab's office, where we were trying to protest against SB 403. We've got that coverage. I'm guardedly using the word we because it was not just Indian Americans who were protesting. We are going to give you interviews of other mainstream Americans also weighing in on this. This is not an issue that affects one community. Understand that many Americans are agitated by it. That's number one. Number two, at 9 p.m. tonight, we are going to have live show with Sumit here, where we are going to look at what is happening in Pakistan. Is the judiciary another plaything of the army? And that's all going to happen. Now let's get back into our mainstream programming. 𝙒𝙬𝙤𝙬, apologies because I needed to make sure that all points are covered. The countries that are going to be worst affected, it is believed, are India, Japan, Germany, and France. Why these four, sir? Why not China?
Well, China has got its agreement with both Saudis as well as with the Russians. And what exactly is the scope of the agreements, we don't know. But there apparently is some kind of behind-the-scenes agreement. And remember, China and Russia and China and Saudi, those deals operate outside the kind of the traditional financial and monetary system, because China is a power unto itself. So therefore, China is excluded, whereas India, Germany, France, Japan operate within the financial ecosystem. We covered in the last DGI, and Japan was given the concession to take it at $60 based on the current price cap. When it goes to $100, the price cap goes off the rails as well. So what kind of deal India will do, we don't know. Obviously, the industrial nations, which is Germany, France, and Japan, are likely to be impacted. And the number one line item from an expenditure point of view is India.
Yes, brace yourself, Indians, and this is not going to be easy. It's going to be ugly. But let us see what kind of a rabbit the Modi government tries to pull out of it. They really did that when the war started and they got crude at a reduced price from Russia. Whatever be the merits or demerits of that decision, at least in terms of shielding the people from inflation, it did a tremendous job. I just wanted to touch upon that. So let's move on to other things. Trump has arrived back in Mar-a-Lago, and he took pot shots at not just the district attorney, but also the presumptive judge who will be on the trial. Sridharji, is this a little unusual?
Well, I think that it's not unusual. Trump has his own style, so we need to focus on how I listened to his entire press conference. He made this into a political rally rather than blaming, or rather than looking at this within the context of the specific allegations. He said this is a war against democracy. This is election interference. This is about stopping me from becoming the president. Today, I'm leading in the polls. The whole thing is a political orchestration. Look at the people behind it. I don't even know what is the crime. There is no mention of crime, but it is an alleged kind of situation which they are cacking up. And this is the basis on which they have done it. And he sought the people's support and went after in a more kind of a political tone rather than specifics around his own kind of allegation in the press brief, Sriji.
The president of Taiwan is visiting United States now, and there was a joint statement with the leader of Congress, Kevin McCarthy, a Republican. Sridharji, walk us through a little bit about what transpired in that. What is Taiwan expecting from the United States? And in return, what is the United States expecting from Taiwan, sir?
Well, I think in a nutshell, Taiwan is a very important strategic cogwheel within the context of electronics, semiconductor manufacturing. So it is the global supplier. To that extent, Antony Blinken made a statement: any war on Taiwan will have an impact on the entire Mother Earth. So don't kind of assume that it is just a war on Taiwan. So that's the kind of the first context. The second context is that this is the way they see throttling China, because Taiwan would be the first step in terms of the East China Sea access, and then making the way into South China Sea from controlling and basically managing the Indo-Pacific gateway. So therefore, that's the second facet of it. The third is around the economic disruption that is likely to be caused. So these were the issues that were discussed. This is bipartisan for obvious reasons. As you probably know, Nancy Pelosi made a landing with U.S. Air Force and U.S. naval ships cover into Taiwan. So therefore, there's a bipartisan. So basically, Kevin McCarthy, notwithstanding the Chinese warning, conducted a meeting where they talked about the democracy of Taiwan would be preserved, as well as the current status quo will be preserved, and United States, in a bipartisan manner, will provide all the support to the Taiwanese people. So this was an extensive, and there was a good set of discussions that took place right within the U.S. soil, under the blink of the Chinese eyes from within, from obviously China.
And it looks like President Tsai had also private meetings with several lawmakers, and that went on, and that probably happened outside the limelight. So we will see how this plays out. More importantly, House Judiciary Committee appears to want to subpoena the DA who has issued the indictment for Trump, along with 2 associates. Sridharji, this has become more and more of a partisan fight from the way I see it, Sridharji. Even people who don't like Trump are now saying that perhaps the DA did not quite line up all his ducks before he indicted Trump on 34 counts. This is how I'm seeing it. I'm an independent. I just wanted to know from you, sir, when is this rhetoric going to stop? But is there merit in what the House is trying to do?
This is now a political game. So what the House is saying is it wants to summon 2 of the deputies, Pomerantz and Kerry Dunn. Now you can go back and validate who Pomerantz and Kerry Dunn is. Pomerantz is obviously a sympathizer of Hillary Clinton, and probably supported, the Obama and other types of people. When you look at Kerry is the one who fought and on the January 6th, and which resulted in impeachment of President Trump, if you recall. So this whole thing is a political agenda. Now, these two people recommended to, who are deputies to the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, recommended to him to go after Trump and indict him. At that point of time, the Manhattan District Attorney effectively stated, no, there is not a case, and therefore they resigned. And especially Pomeranz has written a very big book, which is likely to be published very soon, or almost getting ready to be published. So what they're saying is, how come this fellow declined then, and what prompted him to bring this case back? So they want to subpoena, and they also want to find out whether they used federal money, because this is about interference in 2020 elections. The Federal Election Commissioner himself has, or ex-commissioner himself has basically stated that there was no violation of the federal election laws. So they want to get behind and figure out what exactly is the underlying political connotations behind this, rather than any substantive issues that actually forms the basis.
Sridharji, I just want to set one thing. I think it's 2016 elections, not 2020. That's when this thing came up, isn't it?
Correct. 2016 elections. I stand corrected. It's not 2020, 2016 elections. Yep.
Yes, sir. And then there was a public statement by George Soros saying that he had no hand in encouraging Alvin Bragg. But see, the problem is that doesn't stand out. Why? Because he is the biggest donor to the Democratic Party. He has given 100 million in the 2018, if I remember correctly. From that point forward, 100 million goes a long way. Not only that, he created another 100 plus million purse for those who are actually locked in tight battles over specific issues like gun control, for example. And so there was a lot of money sloshing about for the Democratic candidates to draw from kitty of George Soros. So I don't think he can really walk himself away from this. No matter what happens, he's always going to be the person who will be said that, you were the one who were funding this. I don't know how he's trying to, brazen it out, saying that he had no role in it. Sir, your 2 cents, and then we can go on to the next topic.
When somebody comes forward and says, I had no role, then it's self-explanatory that, he probably had some role. So therefore, there ends the matter. As far as he is concerned, I mean, there's enough documentation to say that he did support or fund Alvin Bragg's election. Whether he actually is behind the case is an entirely different matter. And he made a subtle comment, which is to say Trump deserves to be punished. This was his statement. So the fact that he came out in public makes a self-explanatory case that he is behind election of a number of pro-left, pro-progressive judges in United States.
Chinese aircraft carrier sails off Taiwan coast as the meetings take place in US and Taipei monitors for any retaliation. China moves on Taiwan would hurt every country on earth, says Secretary Anthony Blinken. Sridharji, this is again the rhetoric being upped in Taiwan. We think that it's not going to be on the mainland, but it'll be on some small places. Walk us through this. What are the new developments? Now, US is also telling that China, you are aiding and abetting Russia. So are there going to be sanctions on China? Would that not hurt China really badly?
Well, I think what you're witnessing is three theaters of drama that is going on. Remember Mark Milley, General Mark Milley made a comment. He's went further. He said he's gone further and stated that it is the House, the United States House, which is actually irritating the Chinese and potentially dragging Chinese to war. And, the United States must tone down its rhetoric just as much as the Communist Party must tone down its rhetoric. So you got one set of activity going on that front. Now, as far as China is concerned, it's going to cherry pick and pick up a spot. But if China is going to be irritated on a continuous manner, then the whole landscape can shift quite dramatically. The fact that the president, the Taiwanese president, has made a visit, met with the people, and sought support is tension further. How exactly China would react beyond taking out the low-hanging fruit remains a very closely guarded secret. It is within Chinese ambit that they say that the war is inevitable around 2024. Why 2024? They have been preparing, and it also coincides with the US election time. So right now, what you're witnessing is they may pick up, this is what we had predicted, the islands around fairly quickly, but eventually the battle will shift. And I don't believe they're going to walk away either from Taiwan, or they're also going to walk away either from India either. These two flashpoints will continue until China is taught a lesson and has a decisive loss.
Sridharji, Finland becomes the 31st member country to join NATO, and this is suggestive that there is a major again realignment of forces in and around Europe, and again, of course, this is reverberating across the world. Finland is in, Sweden still not, and it's Turkey that is holding out. How much of a role do you think Turkey is playing? Do you think the other members can vote Turkey out of NATO?
No. Turkey, I mean, this is the challenge, that NATO and EU work on consensus. So therefore, there have to be some drivers which needs to persuade. The earthquake did not help, probably pushed the Finland across the line. I think there would have to be some other drivers to persuade Turkey to withdraw its objections and bring Sweden into the mainstream. Just from a strategic location point of view, Helsinki, which is the capital of Finland, is not too far from St. Petersburg. If you ever go to Helsinki, you will see a lot of people from St. Petersburg almost using Helsinki as their second home. So this is a momentous point, or momentous period from a historical point of view in terms of Finland becoming a member of the NATO in the EU history. So they have always had a kind of a semi-close ties, but the fact now today, Finland will be defended by NATO and its allies is a significant milestone in the changing landscape of the EU history. Sweden will soon join Sriji, whether it's only a matter of time.
Sir, back to EU. EU is speaking one language with China, whereas Macron, who's also making a visit to China, is much more forthright. Are we seeing some chinks in the EU armor also in terms of who wants to support how much the United States?
I think what Macron has been trying is he has tried negotiation with the Russians that didn't work. He's now saying, let's go to France, let's go to China and talk to China and tell China, hey, please pull back, otherwise it's going to be an economic catastrophe. See, Macron has been, what you call blocked. He's not part of AUKUS, he's not part of Quad, he's not part of any of the strategic alliances shaping the world. He's trying to find a spot, for himself. Germany is the leading player in EU, and a lot of people listen to Germany more than France. So I think he's trying to see whether, he can play an influential role, which is why he has gone to Beijing, and he is talking to Xi and saying, hey, why are you aligning with Russia? And why are you taking an antagonistic view? Because we still want to work with you. But if you go down the Russian path, you're not going to be welcomed anywhere in the EU. Most of the EU nations are very unanimous in their anti-Russia and anti-China position, be it Taiwan or be it Russia, Sriji.
Sridharji, about unrest inside France itself, there are 2 points of view. That one is that it is being instigated by who else? Soros. And the other is that the deep state of some other countries are actually fomenting the trouble. It looks like Macron has effectively found out where the source of trouble is, and he's acting decisively. A quick update on that, sir.
Well, I think that he is steadfast, and he has said that he's pushing forward with his reform. He's not going to buckle. And he is using the appropriate forces without giving the names of the countries and people. Firstly, policy is being pushed. Second, the law enforcement is taking its shape. And in the process, he is dealing with the issue and curtailing the rising kind of violence perpetuated from outside, Sriji.
Viewers, we have been saying about how Russia's membership in United States Security Council itself is dubious based on a statement that Ukraine had made. This was in the time leading up to or just after the invasion in 2022, where they said that the correct paper to replace Soviet Union with Russia was not placed in front of the UN Security Council. But surprise, surprise, today Russia is the chief of United Nations Security Council, sir, and Ukraine is objecting again. But who's listening?
Nobody is listening. It has taken over the presidency of the Security Council, so it's going to preside over. So it has the right of choice, right of veto as to what it can bring to bear on the table. Now, this is the double-edged sword for the Biden administration. Remember, Biden administration believes in all these central organizations which have become defunct, be it UN, be it
They've been captured.
Huh?
They've been captured.
They've been captured. So the story is that now what's happened? So Russia is saying, yeah, you want it? Okay, fine, no problem. We are the head. And China is there to support Russia's move. So two P5 members are pro in terms of supporting each other in whatever the strategic agenda that is being pursued at the United Nations Security Council. So the so-called organization, which is supposed to solve the global problems and global issues, stands witness to the mayhem that is going on right now and what is to come in the days and months to follow.
Sir, in the mid-80s, before the Soviet Union crumbled, we used to have this kind of news every day. US would expel some diplomats of the Soviet Union, and they in turn would expel one or two more than what the US expelled. And this game would go on and on. Then there'll be, spying tools brought about saying, look, Soviet Russia is spying. And then those guys will say, look, you guys are spying. So this kind of a game is going on. Now, what has happened in India-China relations is that India has asked one Chinese journalist to leave, and guess what China does? China says two of the Indian journalists who used to be in China may not return back to China. Sridharji, what was the reason why India told this one journalist to leave, sir?
It's obviously interference in the affairs.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, and in the affairs. One of the guys from India who is surprised is I think one Mr. Ananthakrishnan from Hindu. Because Hindu has a very warm relationship with the Chinese. So it's obviously he has done something wrong and he has been sent out, or he has been told not to come back because his visa expired on March 31st. So what you're witnessing is the stepping up. China is a nation where its hand is now beginning to be felt within the context of interference around the world in many and several ways. We have been covering bits and pieces of it through DGI. Is obviously, there is a rumor. I mean, there's you have a wide and extensive coverage of Indian media personnel in DGI, in PGurus, and I'm sure it is being covered. It is stated that all the trouble that is brewing in LAC is deliberately being instigated with 2024 elections on the anvil. So there's a series of things. It's just not George Soros or any of these advocacy groups, but it is also China is playing a significant role to make sure that Mr. Modi is not back.
Yet another US Army official, or I think, I don't remember, I think it was Army, said that there are a million people now staying eyeball to eyeball along the LAC, and the conflagration can erupt any moment. And this is how prepared is India? That was a question that was asked. And remember, viewers, we were the ones who said that it was American help that allowed or that helped India to defeat or ambush the people who are thinking that they can come and take over many forward posts in Arunachal Pradesh. This happened in December last year. But interesting thing, Sridharji, is if I go through comments that come on PGurus channel, by the way, keep sending the comments. I have no problem with you disagreeing with me. Disagree with me on facts. Disagree with Sridharji on facts, not on emotion. So sir, Sridharji, we are in an interesting position. We are called CIA agents in India. We are called Indian agents in US. So that thing, I think we are doing something right, sir, because both sides are not happy, which means we are bringing out the truth.
Indeed. Just since you touched on India, United States has objected and said Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part of India and nobody should question the integrity of Arunachal within India. That's number one. Number two, they have also stated that changing names and other things doesn't alter the matter of fact. Number three, that any threat and unilateral change of positions by war is unacceptable, so China stay away. First nation to come forward and object to the Chinese position after the naming is United States. This is now out in the public and they have issued an official statement to the team. 2 or 3 episodes ago in DGI, we talked about the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in the SCO meet scolding China and scolding Pakistan on specific issues that is close to India. India knew probably something is coming that prompted the National Security Advisor to issue the statement. 2 or 3 days later, you got this 11 or 12 names, which they published as part of in Chinese and Tibetan. They're saying it is an extension of the South Tibetan area. So obviously, India has got its act together and beginning to read the tea leaves from within and preemptively acting on it rather than reacting.
And also, viewers, we have to tell you that there are many voices that come out of the Department of State. For instance, there was a statement given against the Modi government for what happened to Rahul Gandhi in a district court. And this statement was read by an Indian American. And this was one group that deliberately wants to use this kind of a ruse to try and tell that, try to embarrass India. So there are multiple voices from within the State Department. It is up to Secretary Blinken to say, listen, we all have to speak in one voice. This will not do. But we have what we have. So what I'm trying to say is, we give you the news. It's up to you what you want to do with it. So don't say that we are taking this side or that side. We are taking no one side. We are taking truth side. That's all I wanted to say, sir. You covered the status on naming of places by China well. So let's now take a look at what is happening with Bhutan's visit, King of Bhutan's visit to India. Sridharji, this is very critical because people think that if China wants to cut off Northeast, then Bhutan is the place from where they'll make that pincer-like movement. And how prepared is India? And what do you think was the outcome of this meeting between the king and the prime minister?
Well, I think that obviously security was one of the high points of the discussion, and both of them agreed that India and Bhutan are inseparable in terms of the security issues is concerned that came from King himself. But broadly, there are 4 specific areas, at least they focused on. One is economic package support to Bhutan. Number 2, agriculture and commodities import from Bhutan to support the Bhutanese economy. It's the second thing that came out. Continued support for petrol and coal and those needs which power Bhutanese economy. India said it stands with Bhutan on that. And 4th is the broad strategic partnership and understanding between the Bhutanese and the Indian will continue to be maintained at the highest levels. So Modi himself had received the king and spent considerable amount of time. And then, of course, the intergovernmental department people took over and addressed all the strategic issues. So I think that this was put to rest. The lone statement that came out of that Belgian TV interview that seems to have been put to rest. Now, does India have a strategic play in case that Siliguri corridor is breached or compromised in some way by China? I think India is working on that. And this is where one of the topics that we covered was the India-Japan-Bangladesh partnership. I'm not suggesting anything is going to happen to the status quo on the Siliguri border, but the story is, or the 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪 it is called. But I think that India is working out more than one way to make sure that there is no cutoff from the northeast by China with any surprise moves, Sriji.
Thank you so much, sir. India's Minister of External Affairs has put out a strong statement rebutting the OIC claim, which slammed the riots that took place in the aftermath of the Sri Ram Navami. Sridharji, one theory goes like this. The radicals always use the left to first create a space for them, then they drive the left out. Now play this thing in states like West Bengal and Kerala. Kerala today, the communists are in power, but it is the radicals of one particular religion that hold the key. This is a known fact. I mean, no matter how much you can try and paint lipstick on a pig, it still remains a pig. I'm just saying, mota. It doesn't mean anything in terms of what is on the ground. But this is what is happening in Kerala, where they are still barely hanging on to power. But in West Bengal, the left has been driven out. And now talks are coming that perhaps this loony system has now moved to Bihar, because if you see the riots, they were along the Bihar-West Bengal border. And of course, inside West Bengal, there are a few things. We don't know what kind of prime ministerial ambitions Mamata Banerjee has, but certainly looking at her track record, I don't know if anybody will even want to support her as a prime ministerial candidate. Just my 2 cents, sir. How much serious should India take? There will be always some loony in some part of the world saying that the minorities in India are being ill-treated, when it is the opposite is the truth. So how long should India keep on listening to all these things, sir?
No, I don't think, because this is, again, a geopolitical shift that is taking place. We have been talking about the realignment of Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, etc. So some of these noises are stemming from these vested groups because of India's proximity to Western alliance, some of which is also driven by the Chinese in terms of revving up the ante. So the story is here that India will continue anything that comes out of OIC, but it has its own partnerships, underlying partnerships with Iran. It has partnerships with UAE. It has partnership with Oman. It has partnerships with Bahrain. So it will continue to pursue its strategic agenda, while in the public eyes, it is not going to get away, or it's not just going to watch with silence some of this nonsense that comes out of OIC.
Sir, quickly wrap up what is happening in Israel and Iran and Saudi Arabia, and then we can take a couple of questions quickly, sir.
Well, I think firstly, let me touch on Israel. As we came into the show, I saw the video of rockets. Now, we talked about rockets coming out of Gaza, which resulted in Israeli forces going into the mosque and arresting 350 people. Again, from the Gaza, the rockets flew. But as we came into the show, we saw rockets being launched from Lebanon into coinciding with the Passover, which is tomorrow. So the Israel, Palestine, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria situation is highly volatile, and is obvious. There's also been internal agitations. This is another left-instigated bold initiative, and you're beginning to see problems stemming around the Israel, Palestine, Iran, Syria, Lebanon side. On the Saudi situation, surprise, there's no surprise. The Saudi foreign minister and the Iranian foreign minister met the foreign minister of China in Beijing today to further normalize the relationship and basically pave the way to make sure that China is making sure that there is nothing left in terms of the breakdown, and this relationship is cemented in the broader interest of building the anti-Western agenda.
Thank you so much, sir. If you could take a few questions now, please. The first question is from, go ahead. Asianometry YT channel, YouTube channel, had an interesting video titled, "Is America Stealing TSMC?" in December 2022. How far is the CHIPS Act aimed at redirecting the ordered EUVs from ASML Eindhoven to USA?
Well, I think that the very clearly United States is partnering with. I mean, by the way, India is part of it. Japan is part of it. Is Holland is part of it. Germany is part of it. Is part of the broad alliance which they are building. So it has encouraged TSMC to come and set up the factories in United States. India has objected to non-level playing field, which is namely if you give asymmetric subsidies to semiconductor manufacturers to come and put footprint in United States, then you're not creating a level playing field in terms of building the alliance. Having said that, Holland has agreed and conceded to be part. Japan has agreed to be part of. Taiwan is needless to say, and Korea has agreed to be part of this Western chip alliance, Sriji.
Mr. Lee, a couple of things to add to what Sridharji said. First of all, the extreme ultraviolet, which is EUV, it is directed to give you single-digit nanometric processes, and it's still a work in progress. And when this was originally mooted, see right now the chip manufacturing ecosystem is down to one set of players, ASML and a subsidiary in the United States that provides the actual EUV source. ASML gives the scanner. Now, there are no other companies at that level. So what they did was, in order for the technology to progress forward, they went to their customers. Who are their customers? TSMC, Samsung, Intel, and so on and so forth. They were the big chip manufacturers. And they, in turn, invested billions of dollars into ASML so that they could do this research in EUV. This happened over a period of 10 years. I mean, I'm just giving you a recap. So what I'm trying to say here is there are a lot of cross linkages. Who owns what? How much is what? How much is whose stake in which company? So I wouldn't say that America is stealing TSMC as much as saying that the entire ecosystem of these they have to coexist, and each needs the other for existence. So that's how we should look at this, because if China gets its foot in the door, there could be huge disruptions and big issues. I hope that India can in fact establish a semiconductor fab inside India of the current technology, not some 5 generations behind. That would be of no good. That would really give a fillip and an alternate foothold for Indian companies. Like many cell phone companies like Apple can source it from a fab in India. It's going to be much faster. Pricing will be much more effective. So I hope that happens. Let's wait and see. The next question, please. Rahul Rathod wants to know, can Indian GDP reach 4 trillion USD this year? At present, what is the current nominal GDP of India? 3.55, I think.
3 point, it's very close to 3.5. We covered this number. It's 3.48 or 3.486. We said it will soon cross. On that note, we'll use this opportunity. We'll cover this in a little more in detail. The State Bank of India and the Central Bank has issued revised forecast for FY24. Remember, we covered IMF and World Bank cut India's GDP to 6.2%. Whereas, 6.3 was the original 6.2. They cut it. RBI and the State Bank has increased the GDP forecast to 6.5% based on a lot of favorable conditions ranging from monsoons, crop production, manufacturing, good domestic supply, etc. So if you take 6.5% or 7%, we'll be close to about $3.85 trillion India will be at the end of FY24.
Next question, please. Dr. KP23 wants to know, dear Sridharji, what is stopping US and other European nations to lift a sanction on Iran and Venezuela so that oil prices will come down and ease inflation?
Iran and Venezuela are very closely, linked to China and the communist regimes. Having said that, United States did approach Venezuela, and there is some limited supply coming from Venezuela into United States. They will not lift the full sanctions because of the prevalent no elections and very oppressive regime that is prevalent in Venezuela. Iran is concerned. There is no question now. There was an initial attempt through this nuclear discussions, but now Iran and United States have branched off. They're almost in war. We have been talking about the drone attacks that is happening on the US bases. And so therefore, I don't think there's going to be any rapprochement as far as, and Iran is not willing to either abide, because Iran has now found a very good buyer in China.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Subramaniam Vishwanathan wants to know, is the increased crude price reflect failure of US policy and trigger inflation around the globe?
It is a complete and abject failure of the US policy. It cut its own kind of neck. They should have at least allowed the existing lease and contracts to prevail. United States was a net exporter. Now they are net neutral. And they're even beginning to beg from smaller nations. Venezuela is one example. This is the pitiable state that United States has got itself into. The export situation is purely because it promised the EU, got their support for the Ukraine war, and the energy supply is coming from, it's not only the strategic reserves but from its own supply, and which is one of the reasons why we have asymmetricity in demand and supply and price increase in the gas pumps, in the gas stations.
Next question, please, and let's make this the last one. Patriot wants to know, do you think that green hydrogen idea is on the right path and pace in India?
Sorry, I don't have any data to give one way or the other way, Sriji, on this point, unless you have some data.
Well, hydrogen is a good concept because the output is water, H2O. Hydrogen burns and you get output as in water, and the exhaust will have some water coming out, and that's pretty okay. The problem is producing hydrogen free or cheaply, and how to transport it, because it's very inflammable. It's got some serious concerns about how you manage the ecosystem around hydrogen. That's the key challenge there. And beyond that, I think today what we have, there is no alternative to fossil fuel still, because what we don't have are good conversions from solar energy or from wind energy into electricity or an energy form that can be used to drive automobiles. That is really the big conundrum. The best thing is to have a hybrid approach where you can either use petrol, and then petrol will in turn charge a rechargeable electric motor from which you will drive your car, and then once that drains to a lower level, then again the petrol kicks in, it again recharges it. So this kind of an ecosystem, Prius is one example of that. Many cars now have this kind of a technology. That's the way to go, because that would reduce the footprint of consumption, and until we find a better way to get energy. I mean, nuclear energy is still safe as long as you do all the safeguards. That's where the key thing is. Thank you so much, Sridharji, and I think I've explained a little bit. We do really need your support, viewers. We want to get to 1 million as soon as possible, and you can make that happen. Just share our videos with your friends and family and request them to subscribe on our behalf. Also, follow us on Twitter. Sridharji is 𝙒𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤, CHITYALA. Mine is Sri Iyer1. And this really helps us to try and drive the message home, because you get to know instantly where things are happening. Thanks once again, Sridharji. We'll be back on Saturday. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you on Saturday.